some bad news, girls. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to Cinemologists Radio. I'm your host, Joel Davidson, and I'm joined by...
Alex Latanzi.
And...
Come to me, my followers. Come and follow us. Come and follow Y2K.
So, in case you're wondering why it sounds like Y2K is either abdicating the throne of England or giving a commencement speech, I'll explain briefly. We've been experimenting with just some different ways of recording the audio for the podcast. Normally it works out totally fine, but this episode there's some very interesting reverberations. So, in all the tests we've done, Y2K sounded audible and we can hear everything he says. He just sounds like a dignitary from the 1930s giving a speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in case Y2K sounds more authoritative and stentorian than us, that's why. But yeah, so today we're going to be talking about, since it is, after all, the month of October, and Halloween is nigh upon us, we're going to be discussing horror films in all their various forms, and yeah, just some of our favorites, going over things we like in the genre, and it'll just kind of be a free-for-all. But first, it's been a while since we've done one of these episodes, so I guess we can kind of open the floor up and see how everyone's doing. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm getting over a cold. I've got some tea here and some crimpets.
Okay.
Yeah, it's otherwise quite good. We've seen quite a lot of movies
Yeah.
since the last episode.
Yeah, definitely.
We were just watching Chimes of Midnight.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. That was a wonderful movie. Might be one of my favorite Shakespeare movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Orson Welles, as you know, you'll know if you've seen the Mr. Arkadin episodes, my favorite director, but that movie has been so mistreated by distributors over the years that I wanted to wait until a good edition of it came out, and I thought that I would have to wait forever, but Criterion just put it out in a new restoration, and it kind of blew me away. It was just the definition of majesty. So good. And tons of fun, like really funny. I wasn't expecting that.
Oh my gosh, how could it not be with Orson Welles as Falstaff?
Yeah. As we said after the movie was over, he's full of sass.
Oh, he is.
And he just embodies that role just so much. He is Falstaff in essence. So, but yeah, Y2K, what have you been up to?
Bleach is terrible. And...
Yeah, don't drink that stuff.
No. So it's actually been a thing. I'm actually going on kind of like this little bit of an easing back into anime, because I actually took a few months off from it because I just need to kind of rest that part of me. So I've been kind of like getting back into the new season, but I've also been rewatching or actually watching for the first time a lot of old classics.
Ooh.
Not quite that old. I do plan to go that old. Like Captain Harlock is on the list.
Oh,
excellent. Yeah. Very good.
Kind of the same tone as Bleach. I've kind of gone back to the period of time into anime. Started getting into anime, which is the early to mid 2000s. Mm-hmm. Which is very surprising because a lot of anime from that time was total crap.
Actually, I just started showing Joel Azumanga Daioh.
Oh, yes. I still haven't seen like all of that. I've seen like the bits and pieces that people throw around.
Oh, it's wonderful.
But like I went back and I watched the entirety of Death Note again. A really great show that falls off in like the last 10 episodes into like
Mm-hmm.
But it's still really good, and it was because I heard that it ended. I went through and I binged all of Bleach in a matter of like a few days. Not watching the anime because that would take way too long.
Just going through the whole manga, pretty much.
Yeah, the whole manga, and mostly because the anime actually stopped being made before the end of the series, which is a really weird thing. Like the anime just stopped being made; it didn't even have a proper ending.
Oh. But the manga, like you were saying, it like the manga just finished its run. It's totally done now.
In August, I think.
Okay.
So that's actually really interesting because the big three shonen of that mid 2000s huge anime area, most of them are done. Naruto ended, I want to say 2 years ago. Bleach just ended, and One Piece is the only one still going.
Holy cow!
The thing is, considering the fact that I went through 685 chapters of Bleach within a matter of like 4 days, I'm thinking, actually, I could get into One Piece.
Yeah, if you can do that. How many chapters is that up to now, One Piece?
Ooh. Let's see.
That's like the stereotypical keyboard sound effect.
I mean, all keyboards sound the same, right?
But it just sounds so much like you're researching.
One Piece is at chapter 841.
Oh my gosh.
Good lord.
To put that in perspective, Bleach ended at 685. Naruto ended at 700. That's interesting.
Alrighty.
I also caught up on Attack on Titan. So yeah, I've been catching up to a lot of stuff. I've been rewatching some stuff. It's been a good time.
What about you, Joel?
What have I been doing?
What have you been doing?
Oh, jack all.
I know.
No, I've been doing pretty well. Watching some movies here or there. My Blu-ray player has been giving me grief lately, so it's kind of up in the air as to what I can watch. I just recently picked up the Blu-ray edition of Johnny Guitar, which I was really excited about because it's like one of the only movies that has a major role with Mercedes McCambridge, who's one of my favorite actresses, and it's a Nicholas Ray movie, and it's supposed to be like a wacko, crazy Western. And so I popped in the Blu-ray, and I got a half hour through it, and I'm digging the heck out of it, and all of a sudden my Blu-ray player starts glitching out and won't play the disc. I go over to my laptop to play it. The free Blu-ray player that comes with my laptop is Power DVD 11, I think, or Power DVD 10. And it goes, "We can't play this content. Please update your Power DVD player." So I clicked update, and it said, "You are at the latest version of Power DVD 10. And so I researched it. They've stopped updating Power DVD 10 5 years ago.
Oh.
So,
my.
And the only way to upgrade past that to get the latest one, which I think is like 16, it's a number of updates later, is to pay $60. So I think I'm just going to get a new Blu-ray player and just call it a day. So hopefully, once I get that, I'll be able to watch some more movies. But the first half hour of Johnny Guitar was freaking awesome. It's like you got,
That's good.
Yeah, it's like people with crazy names, huge gaudy colors, and incredible set design. Ooh. The opening shot of the movie is an explosion. It just like instantly it goes from the opening credits to Sterling Hayden in the foreground and a huge thing of dynamite just going off and blowing a hole in a mountain. And then there's like Mercedes McCambridge and Joan Crawford are in like the cat fight of a century, and Sterling Hayden's beating the crap out of young Ernest Borgnine, and it's just a blast. I need to finish that soon. Segueing into our subject for the evening, unless it's morning when you're watching this, or afternoon, I don't judge. We're going to be talking about horror films. The air started to turn to chilly, and the leaves are starting to go orange, and people are already putting up Halloween decorations, even though at the time of this recording it's just October 1st.
Yeah, in Georgia, it went below 76 degrees.
I don't even know what to say to that. That's yeah, it's been like 60 degrees all week.
I'm just coming back now. I don't. Okay.
See, some people don't understand this love of cold weather that we have, or like cool weather, but I dig it. Today on the Cinemologists, we're talking about the change of seasons. So I guess to start things off, let's talk a little bit about what we like in horror films, because I think it's a good basis. Just knowing what we like to get out of horror films will inform the kinds of movies that we enjoy in the genre. So I guess starting off, Alex, when you go to watch a horror film, what do you look for in a horror film? What do you enjoy about the genre? What in the films that you like in the genre, what do they provide, or what do you get out of them?
The atmosphere has to be good, and it has to be a little like cryptic and not revealing everything, and very mysterious.
Fear of the unknown kind of thing.
Unknown, some sublime elements in there, just like something beyond either comprehension, or if, you're just going for a good old down-to-earth, blood and guts type thing. I don't really like a lot of slasher films, but, if there are elements of that, I prefer it to be like a very well-made movie, like with good characters and stuff, but also to have kind of like something memorable about it, something new that you haven't seen before, an element of it that actually, like, elicits horror from you, where you're seeing, like, oh, like, I've never, seen that before. Or, like, I really do love, like, slow burn type stuff, like The Shining or The Haunting. Also, monsters ain't bad either.
Yeah,
but yeah,
love a good monster movie. Now, Y2K, when you watch a horror movie, what do you expect to get out of it, or what do you enjoy about movies in the genre?
Well, I mean, currently I expect to get a lot of crap. But what I want...
You want some ice for that burn, contemporary horror cinema?
I mean, I definitely... Everyone kind of says, like, that horror of the, like, the being scared of the unknown kind of thing. And that's a very, like, set rule. Like, that's a kind of a thing that always kind of people say. I think what I look for in a horror movie more than anything really is imagination, like creativity in how this is scary. Things that kind of started with me with that, I think, was a Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
I like just the way the kind of plot revolved around that, where it's just kind of like, you know what he does, you don't know how. And it's all very interesting and like, oh man, that would be absolutely terrible if it happened to me. And I think that continued with that series. It's like all weird and creative, and I can get into that.
The crazy thing about that with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies is that there is that element of the unknown and the weird and the out there dreamscape stuff, but there's kind of rules to it as well, so you're engaged, but it's still like totally outside of the character's comprehension. It's crazy how it walks that tightrope.
I think being creative kind of flows into that fear of the unknown, because if you have something that is kind of new, that is this weird mix of things no one's really seen before, it's that much more interesting to get into that, like, you don't know how it works. Not so much movies, but if you ever read some of the SCP Foundation things.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's some really weird stuff that you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to see something like a movie or a short about that.
Yeah.
It's like, there's one where it's this crystal that if you touch it, like, it will just, like, crystallize your blood.
Yeah, there are some, like, really elaborate ones of those.
So it's like, there's that, and just, like, creative monsters, creative, just really solid concepts that are genuinely frightening. And that's hard to do, honestly, because much like its other side of the coin, comedy, horror is very personal.
Yeah. Definitely.
It is really hard to say this will scare everyone, especially to like honestly scare someone. Like there's shocking and there's jump scaring, and that's what will get everyone. That's why you see that a lot. But like honestly being like scaring someone or making them incredibly tense or afraid, that's personal and it's hard to get to in a general audience, but I like when that does come up. One movie that we watched, The Shining, The Legend of Hell House.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorites that I'm going to probably mention later is The Uninvited, was it?
There's that one. There's The Innocents, though, was the one with...
Oh, no. Yes, that's what it was. The Innocents. That's the one I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Unsettling concepts, just in general, are very good for that. Just like things that are like, oh, man, that is tough to think about.
Yeah, like The Innocents.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, playing off of vulnerabilities also sometimes can be something that can be very subjective.
For me, when I'm watching a horror movie, I'm actually in kind of two minds about horror. Because on the one hand, I do enjoy watching a good horror movie to be scared. But for me, that's half of the coin. We talk about like horror and comedy being very similar. And it's true when a horror movie scares you. And for that, I tend to prefer, like you guys do, fear of the unknown type stuff. We talked about The Haunting before, which is very minimal and leaves a lot to your imagination. And that's the stuff that really creeps me out. In recent memory, the film The Babadook did that as well, where it played off of your paranoia and what you think you see. And like that kind of stuff really gets to me. The Shining as well. The Shining didn't freak me out when I watched it, but it was for the next month I was terrified of brightly lit corridors. So that had an effect on me. But there's another side of horror that I love, which is even if a horror movie doesn't scare me, there's something about a creative, stylish, sometimes just really over-the-top horror film that I just really dig. Even if it doesn't scare me necessarily, I think the horror genre retains a kind of theatricality that a lot of other genres have lost or don't tap into as much. because you can it's just so many like crazy characters and dealing with various concepts, like the George Romero Dead movies. I was never scared of Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead, but the stories are so great and the concept is so out there to think about, and the execution of it is bizarre, to be quite honest.
It's more suspense. Really.
It's suspenseful, and at the same time it doesn't even really take the zombies seriously, because the zombies are dressed up in weird costumes. Like there's a zombie ballerina on point in Day of the Dead, and crazy stuff like that, or like a zombie real estate agent who's smoking a cigar. It's like, and these wild theatrical performances, but it's all in service of something that's very interesting and very cool. And I love that about horror movies. And I love a good horror comedy too, like Night of the Creeps, which is not at all scary, but it's awesome. I love that movie. Or Cue the Winged Serpent, or Dr.
Frankenhooker.
Or Frankenhooker, you know. Got to get your Frank Henenlotter in there. But yeah, or like the Dr. Phibes movies, which we all love, I'm sure. I love that side of the horror genre too, and it's just its theatricality, or its ability to tap into different subjects or different ideas, or just being really stylish. Even if it doesn't necessarily scare me, I love when horror goes there, like when it goes crazy, and in terms of style and substance or whatever.
Yeah.
So
you want to talk crazy? Describing like theatricality, creativity, just all those things go into something like Suspiria. There's stuff that's like uncanny and very unsettling, but a lot of times you're just watching things and, you know, it's just this show and stuff's going on and there's all these bright colors, and the way that like stuff is playing out is so over the top. I love it. It's like it's melodramatic.
It's madness.
It is. I love it too. Same thing with Life Force.
Oh my gosh.
That movie's like a symphony. The movie's like the final movement of a symphony. You're just rushing along to this big finale.
I mean,
I love that movie.
I think it's more the mid part where you kind of have to wait through a huge slog of nothing to get the finale, but
with like the investigation portion.
Like thinking back on it, I've watched that movie once, like actually going through and watching it, and I watched it again on 2 times speed. Just I can appreciate that movie, but I don't like watching it.
I can see that. It is definitely an acquired taste, but I enjoy it too. It's got that, I don't know, it's unbridled craziness, and I don't know what Canon was thinking greenlighting. Well, it's Canon, so
it's Canon.
What do they think? Period.
That is a Canon film.
It's like they tried to pitch a movie to an orangutan with the orangutan's agent there. So I don't know. They made like this huge blockbuster movie that is just unbridled insanity, and I have loads of respect for that movie, and I love it too. And again, I see where you're coming from, Y2K. For sure, but it's stunning that something like that even exists.
Something like the Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. It throws in a lot of things. You have an unknown mystery, and then there's some elements of that, and then you also have the upfront, gross out gore. But then you also have the atmosphere of, you know, isolation and paranoia and stuff, and there's a lot of different kinds of horror going on in that film.
And the crazy thing about that movie is it's, you know, like we've talked about Fear of the Unknown, it's very showy in terms of the gore, but it's like transforming into all these different things, some human, some probably alien, and we don't ever really know what the thing is, even though it's possessing everybody. So it manages to kind of eat its cake and have it too by being like over the top and with all this gore and craziness. But there is still that fear of the unknown in there where you're like, okay, who's the thing? Who's not? What even is the thing? We don't know. And then the isolation factor.
Yeah, I think I was going to mention at some point, I think The Thing is a great place to mention it, is that along with the fear of the unknown kind of horror, there's the helpless form of horror, which is, you know, your Halloweens and your Nightmare on Elm Streets, where it's just they're against this supernatural entity and they're just a bunch of kids.
Yeah, exactly. The Babadook taps into that too a lot, because it's about a single mom whose husband is gone. Being a single mom is really hard already, and she's working, but at the same time, she really doesn't have any friends. Like, she doesn't have time for friends because she's so busy. and none of the people in her neighborhood seem to really care or notice the things that she's going through. So she is totally alone and dealing with a son who is nothing but trouble in a way, even though it's not really his fault. He obviously has some behavioral issues. So that movie taps into that hardcore where it's like she's surrounded by people, but none of them can help her. And that's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying that she has to like confront these demons on her own. And
that was a good movie.
Was
something like cause you're saying like helplessness and that whole thing. I'm trying to think, like, would Wait Until Dark count?
I would say so. Like, I guess it's more of a thriller. But
yeah, definitely.
It goes kind of into a horror territory in a bit. Like Harry wrote, I could see him kind of being a horror icon in a way. Yeah, towards the end especially, where he leaps out of the darkness, that iconic shot. That's a real horror moment. Yeah, like there's moments like that on the theatrical side, like a really theatrical side. Like there's been lots of Draculas, Nosferatu. The one I really enjoy is Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola film. That movie is just like, it is crazy, and it is also beautiful and elegant, grotesque, and just all these things. It's and just uses every like in-camera trick in the book and stuff happening before your eyes, before the camera. You don't get much more theatrical than that. You get like very stagey past that, but that's a really great. I think it's very enjoyable. I guess we've kind of mentioned at least one or two of his films so far, but I think we'd be remiss if we did a horror episode without talking about John Carpenter and some of his films. Do you guys have a favorite John Carpenter movie, or one you can throw out there to talk about?
I have to be, boring and say The Thing. Like nothing can beat it with me, honestly. It is like just the super solid mix of everything that I like, which is that like weird unknown entity, but it's an unknown entity in such a creative way. It forms these really strange things, and it looks really good. It's this isolation. It's this helplessness. It hits every mark that I really love horror-wise.
My favorite John Carpenter, because he's not just a horror director, so there's like a lot of other different kinds of movies he made. So I think
So let's talk about Elvis.
Well, that's the thing. I can't really say what my favorite John Carpenter movie is, because in this discussion, more because it's like I really love Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
I really love that movie, but that's a horror. But like, I don't know, some of the other horror movies that I've seen that I've liked, like I really enjoyed In the Mouth of Madness.
Oh, that's definitely on the mad side.
Oh my gosh, that was so great because it's Lovecraft, like Ian, Lovecraftian, and it's got Sam Neill, who's great.
Jürgen Prochnow. And and Charlton Heston as a publishing executive, which is this just strangest role like for him. And it's great though. Like I just enjoy that he's in the movie. Donde está mi book deal? No. You want to talk about the circumstances through which we saw that movie?
Yeah. One night we were driving around, I don't know we were on.
Driving past Mount Holly in South Jersey.
Yeah.
There was like a specific downtown area I wanted to show Alex, but we got lost. And so we were driving down this stretch of road at night that just kept going, and it was mostly country. You could see isolated diners.
If we kept going, we would end up in the Pine Barrens.
Yeah, we were dangerously close to Jersey Devil territory, but we were zooming.
That's a story for another time.
But we were just going along, and we decided to go back because obviously we weren't finding the place that I was going to show him. So we turned around in the parking lot in front of this diner with this huge neon sign casting down on us, and we went back the other way. And Alex and I both looked off to one side, and there was an exit for a town called Lumberton, which is interesting in and of itself if you've seen Blue Velvet. But the exit itself was just a yawning black hole. There were trees surrounding the exit off of the major road we were on that were brightly lit by our headlights, but past those trees, the little arch that they made over the exit, it was just complete darkness.
Yeah.
You could see nothing.
Nothing.
And as we drove past, you could look around the trees and see a neighborhood. So it almost seemed like the trees made some sort of portal to somewhere else. And as we were driving through it, and on the way back, Alex and I were discussing what movie to watch, and I said, well, I just got the Blu-ray edition of In the Mouth of Madness because it was on sale, and I said, why don't we watch that? And so we put it on, and it was a very fitting movie because essentially the film is like what would have happened if we had made the turn and gone into that town.
Wow.
Because it's just like Sam Neill is looking for this mysterious Stephen King meets H.P. Lovecraft-esque author who's disappeared, and he goes into this town that's supposed to be the place where all of this author's books are set. And he goes in there, and it's just crazy town.
Yeah, it's Innsmouth meets every other like fictional Lovecraft town you could imagine.
One Carpenter horror movie that I just discovered recently, The Fog, which Alex and I watched. Y2K, have you seen that one?
I have not. I think I've heard of it.
It's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah.
I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. It was his follow-up to Halloween, because that had done really well, and they said, okay, let's do something bigger. And so from the opening scene, which really doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the movie, it's just John Houseman is this old sort of almost like out of Moby Dick kind of sailor, and he's sitting around a campfire on a beach with some kids, and he's telling him a story about the ship that wrecked just offshore, and John Carpenter has like the synth organ sort of score underneath, and it's just this amazing opening. And I love Adrienne Barbeau's character in the movie, because she's the main character in the movie, and she plays this jazz station DJ. So she has like this very sort of flirtatious, velvet-voiced on-air personality. Yeah. But she, like, as things go on, she uses the radio station to try and save the town and help people. She is such a cool character in that movie. Tom Atkins is in it, too. Sans mustache, unfortunately. But still, that movie had so much atmosphere, and it's really creepy, not out and out scary, I would say, but the pirate ghosts in the movie definitely have some atmosphere around them.
Yeah, it's like just like some of the shots of the fog creeping over. Those are scary because those remind me of a very creepy scene, especially when I was a kid, from the Ten Commandments. If you've ever seen the Plague of the Firstborn scene?
Oh yeah,
with the Angel of Death, and it's like this. It starts with pulling the blood over the door, and then he was it shot of like looking up at the moon, and like the fog's coming down in like the shape of like a hand, and then you see it coming down, like it's very creepy because it's just lurking like forward. That like is staged like a horror movie, and I remember that, and that kind of. The fog reminded me of that.
That's it. I never would have thought of that comparison, but it's kind of true. And the thing about the fog, too, is there are some process shots where they do some interesting things with the fog taking over the whole town, where you see, like, aerial shots. But the shots where it actually goes through the city are just flawless. They must have had so much control over it, because the fog, it's completely clear, and then just a couple of seconds later, the fog swoops down these streets, and they must have had huge fans blowing. I don't know how they were able to achieve those effects, because it's not done using reverse photography or anything. People are running through the fog, and the car is driving, and everything's normal speed and going forward, so it's definitely quite the feat. And the characters are nice in that, too. I really, really like the fog a lot. Y2K, you mentioned The Innocents earlier. You want to talk about that for a little bit?
When did we first see that?
Yeah, we watched that during the 24-hour movie marathon, which is where we first watched The Shining and The Uninvited. We saw a ton of stuff for the first time that night.
The Innocents sticks with me. I definitely want to see it again at some point, but The Innocents sticks with me as absolutely gorgeous looking.
Definitely.
It's a really good looking movie. Classic, beautiful black and white.
CinemaScope black and white with the widescreen.
Just the most unsettling concept I think I've seen in a horror movie that's kind of like treated very seriously. I've seen a lot of unsettling concepts, but some of them, like this one, just kind of like went for it. And it was... I still just think about it, and I'm just like, oh, why? why would you do that?
Yeah, just the implications in the film about what's going on. Deborah Carr plays this governess who is taking care of this rich man's 2 children as he's away traveling. And at first it seems like everything's fine. The 2 children are really sweet. It's a boy and a girl, brother, sister. And then all of a sudden they just start acting very strange, and these weird apparitions or something. You don't even know what they are, really. You see things in the distance or looking through a window. Things just come to a head and get so scary. And again, very helpless, too. You know, she's in a very helpless situation because she's at this big estate. It's just her and I think the housekeeper and the 2 kids.
Oh, man, I suddenly got flashbacks of the scene of the housekeeper, like, describing what she saw.
It's so good. And the kids in the movie are great, too. The actors. Yeah. The boy, he was one of the alien children in the original Village of the Damned
that makes
as well.
Sense now.
So...
And I think The Innocents is, like, how you do really good, like, children being creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Because, honestly, that is one of the things that irks me the most about a lot of horror coming out right now, is that it is very, very lazy, scary children.
Mm-hmm. Where it's, like, the sing-songy voices and the...
Just lazy is just the best way to describe the whole thing.
Because... it can be done well. It can be done, like, especially tapping into, like, the parent fear.
Yeah.
Of, like, this is something happening to your child and you don't know what to do about it. Like, that is, like, probably one of the worst fears you can ever give someone is, like, hey, what if this was your kid?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But it's gotten to a point where it's just so, like, lazy and cliched.
Well, probably the ultimate... example of that fear being tapped in a horror movie would be something we watched recently, Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, good lord.
Oh.
That freaking movie. Rosemary's Baby is a masterpiece.
It is.
I'm prefacing it with that statement because we're probably going to say a lot of terrible things about it because we're mad at the movie for what it did to us.
Well,
emotionally.
I'm going to say terrible things about how I felt afterwards. It was okay. I got validated in my opinion by Terry Gilliam the other night. It was a Dick Cavett interview with him, and he said the exact same things and he says like at the end of the movie what happens, and he's just like, oh no, like there's a moment, or was it him? I'm trying to remember. It was a Dick Cavett. I was sick, people. Okay, I was watching multiple Dick Cavett show episodes. They bled together. All I can be sure of is that Salvador Dali had an anteater pet and was crawling all over Lillian Gish and Satchel Paige.
I can confirm that. That wasn't like a fever dream.
All right. Oh gosh, just the lead up, and you're pulled into it, and you're pulled into rooting for this woman and everything, and it just leads up to this point. And then it just snaps, and like one line in the movie is the point where you're like, oh no. I was just like, I was just waiting for the movie to end just so I could go on a tear around the room, which I
He just, Rich Evans style, just picked up everything in my room and lightly threw it.
Mostly pillows.
Yeah.
But I in review, I'm like... It was a dang good movie.
It is, like we said, it is a masterpiece. And the thing about it is, too, it has probably the single greatest dream sequence in film history.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt.
Like, because it functions like a dream. It's the scene where, unbeknownst to Rosemary, because she's asleep, she is conceiving the baby. Yeah, she doesn't know what's going on. But... she has this dream, which transitions between, like, the real room that she's in and noises that she hears, but it's also somewhere else. Like, she'll turn around and her bed is on the ocean, or the bedroom leads into, like, a ship, just like a real dream logic is, where sounds from the real world enter in, you feel like you're in the room that you're in, but you're also in another place, fading in and out between these different imagined realities.
It was so well edited. The sound really helped that feeling in that scene. The sound editing of that really helped that. Just like the fading in and out and the integration of like the sounds from the reality into the dream and all that.
And one of the little old ladies from the Waltons in it turns out to be a Satan worshiper. So,
oh man,
that's something else. But it doesn't ruin the movie too, because there is a really weird, messed up sense of humor to the film.
Yeah.
Which makes the horror elements more horrifying, and it's also like a kind of sharp relief too some of the time. You can laugh it apart while you're suffering through the rest of the film. But Mia Farrow's so good in that movie. Everybody's great. Like Ruth Gordon and John Cassavetes. Great performances, but especially Mia Farrow. She just carries that movie, and she's a dynamite on screen. She's so good.
And Charles Grodin appears. He's a doctor towards the end of the film.
That's right. I remember that because I was like, is that Charles Grodin? He's very young in that film. And it was like to the point where I didn't even think to mention that guy kind of looks like Charles Grodin, but then we found out it was Charles Grodin.
It was like I almost forgot because it's like a William Castle production.
Yeah, William Castle, if you don't know, he did a lot of very gimmicky horror films in the 50s, like House on Haunted Hill, and he did some good films, but they were very gimmicky in terms of things that he would pull in the theater, like having skeletons flying across the room or people in masks attacking theater goers.
That's a whole other brand.
Yeah, that's a very different kind of horror. But he, late career, somehow produced Rosemary's Baby, and unfortunately he couldn't capitalize on that success and move on into doing other films of that kind because he couldn't get it together. It'd be weird seeing Rosemary's Baby done as a 50s William Castle movie where there's demon babies like falling from the rafters, or somebody dressed like Ruth Gordon appears behind you and offers you a drink.
Lipton tea.
So what, I guess this would be a good time to throw that out there. And maybe we've talked about the movie already, but for you guys, I'll ask you Y2K first. What movie, you can point to one movie and go, that movie scared me more than any other movie, and why?
Ooh, that is hard, honestly. I think that I have to give it over to The Shining.
Really?
Yeah, because let me tell you, that hotel room scene is etched into my memory.
Room 237?
Yeah.
Yeah. You was the movie marathon the first time you had seen it as well?
Yes.
Oh, I was
Alex.
there, kind of.
Yeah, so we saw that movie at I think 5 a.m. Towards the middle of a horror movie marathon.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where, and I don't know if this happened to you, Y2K, but it happened to me, like after the movie was over, we took a nap for a little while, and that movie mixed with my dreams in the most horrific cocktail one could possibly drink in their sleep. That time of night that we were really tired and the movie's so hypnotic, and then like the Room 237 scene happens and it's like a waking nightmare.
It got me. It unsettled me quite a good bit.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. Alex, what would you say?
I don't know, like I think that the haunting might have been like that experience of seeing it the first time was terrifying, because I had no idea what was going to happen, and I was expecting to see so much, and that created like all these things in my head. Yeah, that, but also I'd like to slip in as well The Entity, because I watched that late at night one time. I actually double featured, unintentionally double featured that with Suspiria, because that was on before. I saw Suspiria. And then after that was The Entity, and I was like, I kind of want to stay up for this. And I did. And that movie is absolutely terrifying, like, in the sense, like, you're putting yourself into this domestic situation. This woman, if you don't know, it's about a woman who's repeatedly raped by a ghost or something. It's not really clear if it's a ghost or it's an entity. It's a thing. She's attacked by it, and she's just going about her business, and suddenly she just gets attacked, and it just starts happening. And the thing about the movie is every time the entity is present, is doing something, you hear this pounding. I don't even know what to call it, but it's like this music that's just like pounding, and it's something very primal and nightmarish. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's perfect. And that made that movie very scary when I saw it. It's got Barbara Hershey in it, and she's really good.
Yeah, I would say for me, definitely Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein and the Wolfman. That's actually not a joke.
Oh, I believe it.
I saw that movie when I was, I think, like 4 years old. My parents rented it for me from the Blockbuster, our local Blockbuster, and I watched it, and I watched it late at night, at least late for me at that age, like before bed, and all the lights were out in the room, and I don't know, just something about the black and white and the bad sound, the hiss from the audio, and I don't know, seeing like Frankenstein's monster walking around and terrorizing Lou Costello did freak me out, and I remember shuddering, and I've never had that experience watching a horror movie again until I watched The Haunting, and The Shining too, to an extent, although my reaction to The Shining was more the fallout after the movie, being psychologically tormented by what I'd just seen. In recent terms, probably The Haunting. Again, because, I have an overactive imagination anyway, and I always imagine the worst. So to have a movie where things happen, but you don't see them, you hear pounding, you hear distant murmuring voices, and you see something trying to get into a door, and or you'll see something that looks like a face appearing in a pattern on a wall. Stuff like that terrifies me. And so the first time I saw The Haunting was probably the most scared I've ever been in a horror film. Subsequent viewings, it's actually been kind of a relief because the shock factor wears off, and I can appreciate all the other aspects of the movie more.
Yeah.
How great the script is, how great the acting is, the cinematography, the set design. I'm able to appreciate those things more on subsequent viewings, but that first time, man, watching The Haunting was, geez. And like going to bed afterwards, like feeling cold and not being able to not feel cold just because of what I had just seen.
Honestly, I can't remember much of my first time watching The Haunting. I think that's intentional.
Just repressed memories.
You describing it just brought a lot of stuff back, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was, okay, all right.
Also, though, since the remake is out in theaters and disappointing everyone right now, or the sequel, or whatever the heck it is, let's talk about the Blair Witch Project for a minute.
Never seen it.
Oh, okay. Well, this is awkward. No, I can throw a little bit of love towards the Blair Witch Project, because it's one of those movies that a whole bunch of hype was made for it when it came out because of the marketing and how different it was doing found footage and so on and so forth. And then it just kind of sunk off the face of the earth for a little while, and people have revisited it and gone, no, it's just stupid. They're just walking around in the woods with a camcorder, and then other people are genuinely scared by it. And I'm kind of in the second camp. I think it's just such an atmospheric movie, just like the overcast, the woods, and the fact that they're shooting it on a high-8 tape camcorder and a crappy rented 16mm camera with black and white film stock. I just love the atmosphere of that movie, and when the weather starts to turn, I almost want to pick up my old high-8 camera and go out in the woods. Just something about...
Yeah.
And it has nothing to work with. It's literally just 3 actors wandering around in the woods, and occasionally you'll hear a sound or some of the things they see, like little stick men, and even the last shot of the movie, which is the most revealing, creepy thing in the whole movie, gives away nothing.
Yeah.
But you see it, and it's still just like sends shivers down my spine. And I don't go in much for the found footage thing, but the Blair Witch Project does it really well. Also, The Last Broadcast, which came up before that, which is about the Jersey Devil, funnily enough, is actually pretty good, if memory serves. I think I didn't like the twist ending, because it does have one of those, but it still has some good atmosphere to it, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I've seen that one. But,
the Blair Witch Project is really good, because like you said, though, it makes filmmaking seem very possible. Actually, if you want a good laugh, if you've seen the Blair Witch Project and you want a really good laugh, or just a great thing, look up the Scooby-Doo Project on YouTube. So around the time that Blair Witch Project actually first came out, basically Cartoon Network was having a Scooby-Doo marathon, and they made this whole thing, this whole marketing campaign centered around this parody of Blair Witch Project. And it's amazing because it's like live action footage, but they put all the 2D reanimated Scooby-Doo characters in this in this scenario. It's fantastic. It's hilarious. And there's like a scene where they have like this sheriff giving like a speech about how like they found these tapes, Scooby-Doo tapes in this van, the abandoned van it's like the Mystery Machine. They have all these photos. And there's like a jump scare in or it's kind of like a jump scare in one of the parts where it's like Scrappy-Doo pops up and they all scream and run away.
Because nobody wants to see Scrappy-Doo.
Not in the woods at night, least of all.
Actually, it reminds me, kind of like if we're going back to like things that scared me as a child, actually frightened me as a child.
Yes, have a seat on the psychiatrist's couch. We'll unpack this.
Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island.
Yes, actually.
That movie frightened me so much. Genuinely, like, I have images in my mind, and I'm like, I remember that was a really, really frightening movie for me when I was young.
Because the monsters were real. It's the first time they did that on Scooby-Doo, to my knowledge. They advertised it as being the first time.
Yeah.
I saw that for the first time at my grandmother's house. I remember being alone in the room watching it, but I didn't want to tell my grandmother that it was scaring me because I wanted to finish it. And so I just was isolated in the trauma of Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Yeah, the funny thing is, too, I remember those Blair Witch promos, or the Scooby-Doo Project promos from 99.
Yeah.
But at that age, I didn't know what the Blair Witch Project was. So I was like, why are there these really creepy Scooby-Doo bumpers?
You were describing those, and I'm like, wait a second, I remember these.
Yeah.
We gotta send you the link, because when I saw it for the first time, Alex sent me the link. I was like, wait, this is ringing bells. It's a great nostalgia trip, so I'll send you the link once this episode's over.
It all comes back to Scooby-Doo.
It does. It's the primordial ooze of the horror genre for us 90s kids.
It comes in there. And Charlie Brown.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown is a must at any... It's like the ultimate kickoff movie for any horror marathon.
Yeah. That, or for me... like, if you, like, start off really light, like, I usually do The Ghost of Mr. Chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, The Ghost of Mr. Chicken, okay, my dad for years was, like, talking about how that movie scared him when he was a kid. It's a Don Knotts movie, and he goes in this haunted mansion. This organ plays by itself, and, like, that really freaked my dad out. And it is creepy. They play it up, you know, as serious. I remember watching that movie a few years ago and then having like this intense nightmare after seeing that movie, and it was just kind of like really random. It's like what we call the creepy jeepers type of scary, where it's just not even horrifying or anything, but it's just like that spooky
cobwebs and paper mache skeletons and silly ghosts. And, okay, I'll open this one up. Let's just throw out some recommendations. Y2K, just for a horror movie marathon, or just because it's the time of the season, maybe something people haven't seen. Throw out some horror movie recommendations.
I mean, my first one will always be House. That's such a crazy movie, and it's just already is this great theatrical genre. And the Japanese have never cared about being realistic anyways. So just like having this overly theatrical horror movie coming from Japan from the 70s is just this really great, sometimes genuinely very unsettling imagery, but honestly just campy and over the top, and it's got this weird mix of emotions and tones to it.
It's strangely heartwarming.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm trying to think of things like people normally wouldn't say as like horror movie recommendations, because it's like you have the whole list. Like, I'm definitely going to put, if you haven't seen it, The Innocents on there. That is just, that'll scare you. That'll at least creep you out. And I've been thinking about this because it's definitely a movie that unsettled and scared me. But The Cook, the Thief, his wife, and her lover.
We were just talking
about that out of left field.
We were
That's
just talking
awesome.
about that earlier, but
yeah. How often do you have a conversation about The Cook, the Thief, his wife, and her lover?
Not very often, which is interesting because it's on Netflix.
Hey!
But I actually watched it with a friend of mine not too long ago, and it came up as kind of like like there's these weird movies and stuff, like there's like movies that have like very like strong and weird scenes. I'm like, yeah, this is one movie I know of. And for some reason they're just like, oh yeah, let's watch this now. We watched it, and watching through it, I think it was about every other scene, I had to just kind of say, okay, now watch yourself.
Yeah, no, there are some horrifying elements in that movie for sure.
We actually had to pause and take a break after the button eating scene.
Oh, yeah.
What was the fallout from that? Like, what was this friends of yours' reaction when it was all done?
They loved it.
Oh.
Yeah, it has an effect.
I did have to ask if they were just saying that because they were watching with me and didn't want to hurt my film feelings. But no, like, they actually did enjoy it. We actually had, like, a really interesting conversation about it afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah, that movie. I watched that movie in a class. We just watched the whole thing all of a sudden. Like, oh, we're watching this movie. It was like an acquired taste, but once I got it, I was like, that was a movie. Like, the music did it, everything did it. Like, it was just like all there. I mean, and some of the horrifying elements, especially at the end. But it's like, it's all so melodramatic in the way that some of the craziest things in like a Shakespeare play are.
Yeah.
It's like all these things happen because all these people are so terrible.
It may not be classified as a horror movie, but you know what? You don't want to eat 3 hours before or after watching it.
Actually, I was quite hungry after that movie. I don't know about you, but
Well, let's unpack that later. Alex, once you're finished dying, what would you recommend to the kids playing along at home?
I finished dying a long time ago.
Well, that's weird.
Wait, what did you say? Kids movie?
No, I said to the kids playing along at home.
To the kids-
I was being jazzy and host-like.
I ruined it all. Well, you know what does really good mixing of sci-fi and horror is Quatermass.
Oh, yeah.
Quatermass 2 is really good when there are some scenes that are truly horrifying, like in a sense. Actually, I'm not recommending this movie. Well, okay, partially. There's a horror movie. There is one movie I have seen. I've seen The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and the Lover twice, voluntarily. I mean, you know, if you like it, you'd probably see it again. But I have seen like many movies that have made me cringe or just kind of like get really uncomfortable. I finished them all. I have never, and I will never, I think, bring myself to be able to finish watching Slither.
Oh.
I can't even talk about that movie. Like, that movie messed me up. I'm
Holy
serious.
crap.
I have seen stuff everywhere. That movie I shut off and just sat there, and I was like, I'm ruined for life. Like, this is terrible. If I ever meet James Gunn, I'm gonna punch him in the face. I don't know if I ever will, but I have that inclination right now. I'm just
He becomes an extra on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 just so he can physically accost
my
James Gunn.
plan for revenge is, I mean, if you've seen the movie out there, you know what I'm talking about. And neither of you have seen it, so... But the thing is, I was enjoying that movie, and, like, a lot, again, leading up to this thing that happens, and I'm just like... I'm freaking done. I'm done. I'm just like... It wasn't even like that. I was just like... I just shut the TV off. I was watching it on TV, and, like... I want to know what happens in the rest of the movie, because it was like... There's more to the movie after that, and it doesn't involve that, but it's like... Is
it like a situation where it's just the one scene? Like,
no.
You cross over...
It is the one scene, but there's like multiple scenes leading up to it that are like revisiting that. It's the scene, it makes them so much worse, and I'm just like... Who? Why? I'm like... And so... But after that, it's like the rest of the movie doesn't involve any...
So you feel like you could finish it?
I could if it was right after that part, that half.
Yeah.
Because it was interesting, and you had some cool, like a cool tone to it. It was a little tongue in cheek, like, because James Gunn does make some fun movies. I've seen Super, and that's very dark but very interesting. And Nathan Fillion was in it, and he's cool in it. But like afterwards, I could see where the movie was going, and it seemed like it was going to be a romp or just kind of like a crazy thing at that point. But I was just like, I can't right now. I'm broken. So there we have that little thing. If you want to, we're talking about horror movies. We're talking about horror. You want horror? I got horror. I got you horror. You know, I want a copy of Slither so I can destroy it with extreme prejudice. I'm dead serious too. I'm gonna put that thing through a wood chipper and then spray WD-40 on it and then like throw a cigar on it.
Which brings us to the next recommendation, Wood Chipper Massacre. Yeah. Anything else?
No.
Yeah, I guess for me, in terms of recommendation, I kind of can cheat a little bit because I can see my DVD and Blu-ray collection right out of the corner of my eye. So, just throwing out a couple of recommendations real quick. I would recommend that you check out The Legend of Hell House. Y2K mentioned it earlier. It's a great homage. It's kind of like Richard Matheson, like screenwriter. He wrote the book it was based on. He also wrote the screenplay. Sort of his homage to the Haunting of Hill House in the Robert Wise movie The Haunting, and it's his take on that. It's sort of like a very stylish 70s sort of riff on that idea, and Roddy McDowall's in it, and he's so freaking cool in that movie, and it's just loads of atmosphere and horrific stuff going down in that one, and a very memorable ending. So check that out. Check out Eyes Without a Face, which is a wonderful movie by George Franju about a plastic surgeon, a scientist who is stealing the faces of women so that he can restore the face of his daughter, which has been horribly disfigured. That movie came out in the early 60s, and it has some very cringeworthy moments. And it's not just the shock value. It just has a great atmosphere all through the film. Also, it features Arthur from Band of Outsiders as a cop, so that's kind of cool.
Oh, that reminds me. Diabolique. That was I was trying to remember. Yeah, Diabolique is great. There's suspense, and there's some moments where you're tensing up because something's coming. That's a great movie, and I don't want to say any more about that, but spoil it. But look at Diabolique, because yeah.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen, this is out of left field, if you haven't seen the original Wicker Man, and you just know about it because of, oh no, not the bees, my eyes, check out the original Wicker Man. It's so atmospheric and so great, and oddly enough, it's a musical of a kind.
More or less,
it has musical numbers. And it's crazy if you watch the Nicolas Cage version, because it's like they slightly tweaked everything from the original to make it unintentionally funny. In the original movie, the line is, "Killing me won't bring back your apples." Not that funny. In the remake, it's, "Killing me won't bring back your honey." And it's like, just the substitution of honey makes that line hilarious. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about the remake. Watch the original if you haven't seen it or only know of the Nicolas Cage version. It's an incredible movie. Sadly, we lost the director, Robin Hardy, earlier this year. One of the many wonderful people we've lost in 2016, which is sad because he did an excellent job directing that film. And it's a very interesting meditation on faith and religion and like the conflicts therein. Very fascinating stuff. And just a great atmospheric movie. So check that out. Y2K Body Snatcher from Hell is a great one.
Oh gosh.
And When Horror Came to Shochiku,
I need to see that.
which might be another CR episode in the future, just talking about that box set, because that set is insane. It's an Eclipse set that Criterion put out. And all the movies are worth watching. Some for other reasons than others. But Y2K Body Snatcher from Hell is a great horror movie, and it's delirious. Worth watching, for sure. It's kind of like if The High and the Mighty went to hell, pretty much. So, horror movies, they're pretty great. Yeah, any closing remarks, guys?
Horror is for the most part overrated, and I hate a lot of it. No.
Well, now that you've heard that.
That's a great way to end an episode on horror movies. I spent most of my life avoiding the horror genre, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And a couple of years ago, I made a point. It's like, okay, I'm going to watch some horror films now. And I don't know. I don't love all horror movies. Like, I'm not big into slashers, except for, like, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are really cool. And I like the first Halloween. But it's like the little corner of horror movies that I love voraciously. And it's been fun being able to celebrate the best elements of the genre with you guys this evening. So until next time, I'm Joel.
I'm Alex.
I'm Y2K.
And remember, folks, stay crispy.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Cinemologists Radio. I'm your host, Joel Davidson,
I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but now I'm going to turn things over to Y2K, who's going to speak for a little bit on the subject of breeding chihuahuas in subarctic conditions.
Oh, you see, that's actually quite difficult to do because they don't really have hair. I mean, if they do have hair, it's very, very short. Now, the thing is, you have to wrap them up in blankets like little burritos. However, if you do that, you can't have them maze. So you actually have to have, like, a very good folding technique. So you can fold these little burritos, these churritos, as I like to call them.